Hi, I'm Cobbler Bob, and this is my 1971 Cutlass S Resto mod. Now that the 4L80E transmission has been installed, it's time to install the Holley Terminator X fuel injection, not only just to get the advantages of EFI, but also to run the transmission. Part of the install will also be putting in a Holley in-tank fuel pump into the stock tank. Okay, so let's go. All right, guys, let me show you some of the high points of the EFI install. Give you some of the high points. I've read the instructions very thoroughly, and I also want to tell you the things that have kind of stumped me or were difficult for me, and hopefully it'll make it easier for you. Then hopefully by the end of the time this video comes around, this thing will actually run and start, and I can tell you that the EFI works and that the transmission works. So one of the first major components here is the actual throttle body. Now, what I got is the Holley Terminator X Max Stealth. So there's a Sniper and the Terminator. The Terminator is a little more expensive. It's a little higher end. I believe the Sniper does not have any provision to run the transmission. So part of the reason I got this EFI was it just made a lot of financial sense. If you haven't seen it already, there's the beautiful 4L80E. Pretty awesome. But the transmission control unit, I think, was with... I need to get a transmission control unit and the throttle position sensor. I think that was around $1,200. So the 850 CFM carburetor or 950 CFM carburetor that I bought was like $900. So that's basically a little over $2,000. And I think this setup was $2,400. It's really not just a $300 difference though, because I had a cheap fuel system setup, and I had to buy a whole new fuel system. So it's really about a $700 or $800 swing, but still EFI for $700 or $800. That's not bad. So you have, like I said, this is the Terminator X Max Stealth, and I believe the Max Stealth moniker means that it does have the capability to control a transmission. This is the distributor. This is the part number 565-206 Dual Sync Oldsmobile distributor. So the key with this is this lets me control the timing with the Holley ECM. You can have it run where the distributor is not controlled by the computer. It's a little bit cheaper, but if you're going to do this, you might as well do that rather than having to change weights and vacuum advance and all that garbage. So that's another component of it. And this is part number 556152. No, that's ignition coil. I think that is this coil. And I made sure to talk to Holley several times to make sure that this, and this all work together. And this is this would be what you would usually in the olden days, the capacitive discharge ignition box like your MSD6AL. But this is the Holley Sniper EFI Hyperspark 2 ignition box. And I will put the part number of that on the screen. And this right here is the Holley ECM. You can see the LED indicator lights on it. They're actually numbered. It's actually upside down the way they're numbered. It's 1 through 8, I believe, right through left. They're upside down because I have it mounted. The mounting lugs just aren't conducive to mounting it the other way. It's actually, it's a very thick, like a fiberglass air conditioning box. I have it screwed right to the bottom of that with 3 screws. And you can see some of the wiring harness wires. By the way, that last one there, that's labeled, I think it's labeled, what does it say, P4 on it? But that is the wiring, extra wiring harness for the transmission. There's several wires in the back there. And you can see the wires coming across, and there's some relays and things like that. So it comes with the wiring harness as well. It's only partially installed, but there is a lot of wiring that goes along with this thing here. Now here is my fuel pressure regulator setup. Now, with the fuel pressure regulator, you can get a pump, which I actually bought and then returned without using. You can get a pump that goes in the fuel tank and does not require a return line. Now, I went on the Hot Rod Power Tour and I met a couple of the different guys from Holley, worked for Holley, were debugging people's Terminator EFI systems on the spot. Long and short of it is when you have the fuel pump way back there in the tank and returning at the tank, you have pressure 58.5 PSI would be coming up to the fuel rail. The injectors would be opening and the pressure would drop. Now that pressure signal goes all the way to the back of the tank. It's being regulated at the back of the tank and not the front. So you get fuel pressure that actually varies, goes up and down and up and down, because the regulator is so far from the actual pressure drop, and it just doesn't work as well. So that seemed to be a problem for some of the people. So I was told many times that if you want it to work well, have the regulator as close as you can to the fuel injectors themselves. So I don't know if you can tell here, but one of these is the, let's see, this is the fuel pressure line right here. AN 6AN 3/8 inch line. It comes up into the regulator, and then it comes through this hose and into this manifold. And there's two, they're not really fuel bowls, but two fuel bowls where there's two injectors over here, two injectors over there. By the way, this is pretty cool. When you look down the bores, it looks like a carburetor, but there's no venturis. Isn't that kind of neat? Right? You can see those little holes where the fuel injectors inject the fuel through. And then there's the return line, by the way. The return line is that bottom one, and that goes down to here. And hard line, I have it plumbed with hard line, and it goes all the way back to the tank. So those junctions right there, I don't know if you can tell, but you can't really see the hard line there, but there is a hard line back in there. So here's the hard line coming out of the frame. That was not easy. So that is 3/8 copper nickel line. It is secured to the frame rail there, and you try to get a better shot of it here. So I've got hard line all the way back to here. Now this bottom one is the feed line, and that is a fuel filter. And then they go to braided from there. So there's another shot of the fuel filter, braided lines. And it's hard to see there, but you can see both of those braided lines going up over the gas tank. So let me show you, I think one of the first things I'll do is I'll show you what I did for the fuel pump. Okay, let me explain to you what I have going on here. This is the Holley 19-350 Sniper in-tank fuel pump. It's a adjustable height, comes with a few different, parts and pieces here. I returned the other one that's self-regulated. You have the throttle body, which has, 4 injectors, which are opening, and then the fuel pressure drop. So the point is you get pulsation and, change in fuel pressure. And the regulator has a difficult time being so far away, holding a constant pressure. Band-aid for that is to put a dampener in it. And by the way, it's a D-A-M-P-N-E-R, dampener, not dampener. You look for dampener, you'll never find it. So, but the point is, rather than doing that, I'm going to run this with a return line. This is 90 gallons an hour or 340 liters per hour, which will be more than enough to support 600 plus horsepower. I just got to adjust the height. The downside, though, is I have to make a hole for it. So what you need is, it's kind of an odd size. It's a 3 1/4 inch hole saw, and then you got to find some place to put it. Right where this yellow line is, there's a baffle that runs all the way across the tank. Now, I'll also cut in a picture here of the side view of the tank, so you see about 2 inches back from this line, the tank starts to kick up. So I want to keep it in this deep area in front of that wall of china, okay? So I think this is going to be the best spot for it. It can't, it can't be here. I have to put the stock sending unit back in, and it's clocked at about, that tang goes into that slot, about that angle. So I have to keep this area clear for the float. So I can't go further this way because it mounts to the chassis right here. So, that's about the only spot that I think I can do it. So the other problem is from this surface where it mounts on the floorboard, there's clearance. It's about 3/4 of an inch. So from here, I've got 3/4 of an inch up. The thickness of this thing here, this is about a little over an inch, like an inch in 1 inch, inch and an eighth, something like that. So I think what that means is I think I need to sink down this surface. It takes, the instructions say that it can take up to, with the foam, this foam right here, it says it can take up to 0.280, a little over 1/4 inch of height variance, and that is exactly 0.280 inches. But that still puts this surface, I should say, way too high to clear the bottom of the chassis, and I don't want to cut the trunk. So I'd rather cut the gas tank since I'm already cutting the gas tank. Does that make sense? By the way, it should go without saying, you got to be really careful when you're doing this. You can't have sparks around gasoline fumes, obviously. So I siphoned all the gas out of the tank. Then with the siphon, I put like a metal hose on the end of it to try and get the last of it out. Then I let it evaporate for 2 days. Then I double checked that, you know, there was no fumes in it by, you know, making sure I couldn't smell any gas. And even blew it out with an air hose to get the fumes out of there before I did this. So just be careful, don't blow yourself up. So let me walk you through how I modified the gas tank. So first I laid out the plate that I needed to sink down into the gas tank, you know, the dimensions with a little bit of clearance on each side. And the multiple lines there are because I needed to fold the sides up. So once I had it laid out, you see these little black areas on the top left and bottom left are the areas I'm going to cut away. It's just, you know, simple geometry really is all it is. And then this is the plate actually cut. This is the plate with the first bend up. You can see on the top and bottom there. And here is with the left side. This would actually be towards the rear of the car, bent up and then bent flattened. And then the sides flattened so that you get, you know, the actual box that drops down in and the corners get welded. So version 1 here was kind of a fail. I didn't allow for the outlet and the lines. It's just sloppy and messy, and I don't like the fact that I welded those corners when I could have just folded it if I was a little smarter. So let me show you what I've got going on here. So I think this is a better version. That's a 1/2 inch deep. And as long as I get this lip flat here, then I've still got an additional, as long as this surface is level with, you know, this surface here, then I've got an additional 3/4 of an inch, which should give me 1 1/4 inches to clear, which should be perfect. And I guess I'd say I'm committed to the project now. Just need to trim it out a little more, but I think you get the idea. Now we're cooking with fire. Now I got to drill a 3 1/4 inch hole again for the pump. All right, I've got it fitted pretty well. You can see I've got holes to plug weld. I think it's ready to tack in. I'm not going to seal it with weld. I will seal it with some kind of sealer. And it's welded in. I dressed up the welds a little bit, i.e. sanded them. It's solid. Now I got to seal it up. I think I'm going to use epoxy glue. So here is the pump assembly put together. You can see the return hose right here. And actually it's very short. It's almost at the shortest possible it can be, because the distance from here to the bottom of my tank is only 6.5 inches. So this hose here that comes with, I think I cut out exactly 5 inches. I think the maximum it says is 12-inch tank depth. So, you know, obviously I needed the short end. And this is going to go down like so. And I'll rotate these things, these little clamps. When you turn the screw, those things turn out and then are supposed to clamp up against the surface. JB Weld laid some masking tape down and seam sealed everything there with the epoxy glue. There it is. Just need to wire it. So this will be for the fuel level sending unit. This will get capped. This return line does not need to be used. This is the pressure line, that's the return line. This one will get plugged and should be good to go. Pretty low profile. So the gas tank is done. I've got lines run. I approximated the length and added a little bit extra. I'm not 100% sure where the junction between these flexible lines and the hard line is going to be, but those are tightened up. The return line is plugged. I'm sorry, the vent closest to the camera is plugged because obviously you don't need the vents. There's 3 other vents in the tank. I will have to plug that feed line, the old feed line, but that sending unit is going to be active for the fuel level sender. So let's get this up in here. And I did get rubber isolator straps. Holley directions here aren't too bad. They're kind of irritating at times though, because some places it says some systems harnesses will have this color wire, some won't. The terminology, but anyway, terminology in a couple places isn't consistent. But for example, here loose wires. So for example, here main power battery connection. It's got a big, I think it's like a 12 gauge wire. Has a main battery power and ground connector on the right side of the ECU. Terminal A, black wire should go to negative, post directly to the battery. Okay, red wire should go post directly to the battery. So there's a bunch of things with this that say go directly to the battery. This is another thing that took a while. It took me actually a couple weeks to figure this out. So it shows you what all these different sensors do. Like for example, I'm gonna have a map sensor. I will not be using a knock sensor. You don't have to have a fuel pressure sensor. You can buy one, but it's like $120 extra. Manifold. What is that? Manifold absolute manifold air temperature sensor. It kind of gives you directions for everything. Oil pressure sensor. Mine is not going to have that. You don't have to have that. That's another $120. Does have a coolant temperature sensor. And nope, that's actually right there. So here's the big harness. But here's something that took me the thing that took me 3 weeks to figure out. There is a separate harness for the transmission. So it was driving me crazy because I couldn't figure out. I had a spare set of wires. I had a spare gray, black, red, and red and white wire. And I was trying to figure out, I couldn't for the life of me figure out where those doggone wires go, because it was like I had more wires, in my mind than this diagram showed. In other words, on this diagram, the transmission wiring harness doesn't show up, right? So how that looks in reality, let me go to the inside of the car. As you can see here, now I have it labeled transmission wiring harness, okay? So you see those are those 4 wires I was talking about. Because here there's another wire, right? Red with a white stripe. Now if you notice, this one here, right, it comes off of... This red and white one connects into this harness right here. The instructions say, which is about 7 inches from the ECM. It's longer than that, but this is the one that's closer. We can see these 4 wires. I don't know if you can tell, but those 4 wires go into that JP4 connection, which is, when we go to this, back to the directions here, J4 is a connection for the transmission harness. So just remember that. What connects into here, if you're using the X-Max Stealth to run your transmission, the transmission harness, see X-Max only, that is considered kind of a separate from the main ECM and main throttle body harness, right? So just to reiterate, J4, the transmission wiring harness is considered separate from the main ECM and throttle body harness. Then you have to figure out which setup you're using as far as with your distributor and spark box. And I think this is mine here. Holley EFI Dual Sync distributor with capacitive discharge box. So mine would look like that. There are another set of loose wires here, and these ones kind of look funny. They're very small gauge. There's only 7 here in my hand, but there are actually 8. There would be 4 gray ones with a color and 4 white ones with a color. These are inputs and outputs. You get 4 ECM inputs, 4 ECM outputs. Like for example, one of one of them, I'll show you here on the instructions, is to turn on a coolant a cooling fan if you're running electric fans. So here we go, right? White with a blue, AC kick. So that's if you need to, I don't remember which way it is, but it's either turn off the AC when you hit full throttle or something like that. Or no, is that to kick up that might be to kick up the idle when you turn AC on. Input 2, input 3, input 4 can be programmed for things. See, output 1, that's to power an electric fan, second electric fan. And this one is to shut down the AC at full throttle. Then output 4, I'm going to be using that. I'll explain that. But basically, I'm going to be using output number 4 to drive my speedometer. Now, I have typical, traditional, factory analog speedometer. So the speedometer is cable driven. Now, this transmission, the 4L80, does not have a provision to drive a speedometer. So what do? Well, you need a speedometer driver or digital dash, which I don't like. So that's where this thing comes into play. This is a Dakota Digital ECD-200 B as in Bravo, T as in Tango. This is an electronic speedometer driver, basically. So what this does is it has just basically 4-wire input. What is it? A power, ground, and I think a tach signal. And then it has its own speedometer cable, and this connects to the dashboard. So this thing is actually going to drive the speedometer. Okay? So, but where it gets its signal is you can't take it directly from the transmission or anything like that. It has to come from the ECM, and I'm going to program the Holley to make that output the speed, not tach signal, I apologize, I misspoke, a speedometer signal. In other words, a vehicle speed sensor signal. So output 4 is going to be vehicle speed sensor signal, and that's going to connect to the brown wire here on the Dakota Digital, and that's going to give it a speed signal, and then that's going to drive the speedometer. I hope that made sense. The Holley Terminator instructions say do not power the fuel pump directly from the ECM if it's going to draw more than 15 amps. I think it was like 16.5 amps that this fuel pump I chose could draw. So I decided to play it safe. This is a fuel pump relay kit. I will also put this part number on the screen here and in the description. But basically this fuel pump relay is, it's fairly simple. What a relay is, by the way, in case you don't know, is an electronic switch. So what you do is you have a low powered current, open or close a switch through which a higher current goes through. So you see the big red wire here and the big blue? Those are what actually power the fuel pump. The yellow, so the black is, I think, is it? No, okay, so no, this gray wire and the yellow are what trigger the relay. So when you put power through the yellow wire, it closes the relay and it allows current to flow through that blue wire to the fuel pump. Red wire is basically direct from the battery, okay? And I grounded it right there, so that's easy to get to. And the wire then comes through here, through this loom here, and it goes down through there. And you can't really see, but then it goes to the gas tank. I don't know that this is really the way the directions say to do it. A couple times they say connect to certain things like the main power wire, which is, I think, this one for the Holley EFI, directly to the battery. But the problem is that it winds up looking like this. Now back to the topic of how do you connect the different things directly to the battery. Now here's my battery connection. Now this first one here, it's this big fat one, which is, I believe, oversized, but whatever. That goes to 150 amp fuse, and this goes back to the back of the car. That is to feed the amplifiers. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. I kind of feel like sometimes I oversell you with the cable for the stereo stuff. That amplifier there drives the box. That bigger amplifier drives the subwoofer box here. That thing pounds, man. It's unbelievable. Shakes the whole car. And this smaller pyramid amp drives the 6x9 speakers. Okay. But you can see the junction right there. And that's where that big fat red cable comes in. Comes out to two smaller red cables. And I made a little harness. And then it feeds both of the amplifiers. And the amplifiers are grounded there with a big fat ground cable. So that's what that first wire is. Now, there's a lot more wires. This is the cable management part that's difficult. This is actual main battery cable, right? It runs along here per the factory and goes down there. You can just barely see it down through that tube right there. It goes down to the starter right there. So that's this one. And then there's two more. This bottom one here that's kind of almost a pinkish red, that is this wire. That's an 8-gauge wire. 8-gauge wire can handle, according to this chart I found online, 8-gauge wire can handle constant 73 amps, I believe, is what that says. Amps for chassis wiring. So that still might be under wire powered, but this is a 140 amp alternator. It's internally regulated. These cars come with an external regulator, but high output alternator, so far it's worked fine. In other words, the only thing I'm worried about or not sure about is, do I need a wire that can handle 140 amps if you have a 140 amp alternator? But I don't think it's ever going to be at that maximum state of, output. Here's another 8 gauge wire. So this 8 gauge wire comes to here, to this main lug. So what I did was I purchased this from Summit Racing Equipment, and I made a little external fuse panel here. So again, 73 amp current carrying capacity through this 8 gauge wire. So then what this distribution block does, and these lights either come on or off, they indicate that it's working or not working. So this big main lug here, I think this is like 10 or 12 gauge wire, feeds the Holley ECM. One of them feeds the Holley ECM, I think, is one that has the highest current carrying capacity. And I used a 40 amp fuse because these, by the way, these are like your standard style blade fuses. They call them blade fuses. 40 amps is the largest fuse you can get in a blade fuse, so keep that in mind. I think you can get more in some of there's micro blade. There's a few different types of blade fuses, so just keep that in mind. This one feeds a Holley ECM. This wire here, this actually feeds the fuel pump. This is the positive wire that actually goes back to the fuel pump itself. And based on the wire size, that one, I think you can see the green is, I think I put a 30 amp fuse in it. So I tried to size the fuses just a little bit smaller than the wire. So that goes to the fuel pump. This one here, one of these goes to the spark box. I think this one here goes to the spark box. And that one I've got a 30 amp fuse on also. And then there's another one here. I honestly don't remember what this one goes to. This is one that I just installed today. And this one actually goes to the transmission harness. And this is what provides power to the transmission solenoids. It's a fairly small wire. That's, I think, an 18 gauge wire. So that's only got a 15 amp fuse on it. Okay. On the negative side here, I've got an 8 gauge cable coming from here directly to this little bar here. And again, don't exactly remember which is which, but one of these is direct to the ECM. I think that's this bigger one. And I think that's this, one of these two is to the ECM, Holley ECM. One of these is to the spark box. You get the idea, right? So when it said try to go directly to the battery, that's not literally directly to the battery, but it's within a foot away with an 8 gauge cable directly to the battery. So I don't know for sure that that's going to work. A couple of my friends that are smarter than me said that it would be fine, because I don't see another way to do it. Otherwise, you literally have like a spider web of things coming off of here. And I don't know. I just don't see how else you're going to do it. I tried to manage the cables in a fashion that kind of makes sense. That's why if you see the red one feeds there, then I got these three actually go into a loom. It's hard to see, but they do go into a looming. Oh, this black bracket is a bracket that I made. I will show you that. But I made that bracket. So you can see those 3 wires come in to here. These 2 wires join into that loom here. And there's a couple, 3 different looms, like this one here that looks like tubing. That is from the Dakota Digital. So I tried to manage them all in a somewhat neat fashion and have them go down there. And all those cables go through, they don't go through the firewall itself, but I made a hole. This is not the firewall, the hole where they all go through. It's a 2-inch diameter hole. That's actually in the plate that the steering column bolts to the firewall in. So there's no new hole in the firewall. The new hole is in the plate that the steering column bolts to the firewall with. But that I'm going to show you from the inside of the car. So we're inside the car here. Can you see right there, right? That looks like a grommet. So what that is, it's a 2-inch diameter hole. That's cut in this plate. I didn't cut it in the firewall. This is that plate that the steering column mounts to the firewall. So I cut a 2-inch diameter hole in that, cut a piece of vacuum hose in half to make a rubber grommet around it, and that's how all the wires pass through the firewall. Let me show you how I made a very elegant, simple little shelf mounting plate, I guess you could say, to mount the Hyperspark spark box. I just started with a piece of cardboard. I started playing with it, cutting it out, see how big I wanted it. It actually has 4 little legs on it. The front legs bend up, and that gives me space for the wiring to basically go in between it, and a nice large opening so you don't chafe on the wires. And then once you get this thing the shape you want it, flatten it out, and then trace it onto steel, and voila. So here's what I've got. Here's the bracket. Obviously you can see it's flat, 4 holes, got 1 tab there bent over, the hole drilled in it, 2 tabs bent over. I rolled 2 of the edges so that they don't chafe on the positive wires there. And then this thing is that tab there is gonna mount right there, and the other 2 will go like there and there. Oh, another feature. Do you see the notch there for the cable to go through? I think it's gonna go right about there. And I just need to be able to put some screws up into those holes from the bottom. And I think this hose will go under, something like that. Okay, so here's what I've got. This is the wire plug from the distributor, you can see. And if you look closely in there, well, just look from the back side here. You can see it's a 10-pin connector, but it's got 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so position, I'm not sure what, but from left to right, 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And there's nothing on the other row. So you can see that connects to this one here in the main harness. And as you can see, there are 5 pins on the bottom. There's a blue and white wire on the top. And I'm told, as I talked to Holley Tech today, that blue and white wire is what I need to get a tachometer signal to the analog tachometer that I have, okay? So I was explaining to him that even though there are a bunch of pages here at the end that show you how to wire the capacitive discharge ignition, let me get to the page. This will be the page that most closely represents my system here. So this says Holley EFI Dual Sync distributor with capacitive discharge box. Now what I have here is the Holley Sniper EFI Hyperspark 2. It does say it's a capacitive discharge box. If we go to here, it shows off of the box orange and black wire. There's the orange and black wire. The orange and black wire connects directly there to the coil. Then it shows a red wire that's connected to power. And it shows heavy red, heavy black, right? So I've got those, but you see here it says brown, right? Well, if you look on this thing, there is no brown, right? Heavy red, heavy black, red. And there's a white wire there, right? So there's a white wire there, and then the black brown. So basically what I talked to the Holley Tech, oh, there's the white wire. And it says the white wire is a points trigger. So the point is there's no brown wire. So I asked the technician, well, then where do I hook up my tachometer? He said, that blue and white wire. Now, I don't want to just tap into that wire. I don't think I'd like not to damage harnesses or change harnesses. So the other side of that blue is the middle on the top row is here. So this connector is a spare connector that came with the kit. And I honestly can't find in the directions what it's for. The wire is labeled, well, that's what it's labeled. It says REL, relay, I think is what that's short for. This is the plug. So this plug came with this wire, came in this plug. You can buy these separate, and I think their part numbers are like 571-10, it's -1 something. There's male and female. This is obviously a male connector end. And they're like $22 for a pack of 100. I actually went and picked up a box of them, but the Holley Tech gave me the wrong number, so I got the female end, not this male end that I need. So then I got home and I found out, oh, I have an extra male end in this connector that's not being used. It is a 10-pin connector. So I can't find any use for this listed anywhere. So I pulled the pin out. You can find a couple videos. I'll link one in the description below. But basically what I used to pull the pin out was this. This is if you have, if you have daughters, you'll recognize this. This is a hairpin opened up, just stretched open, and that end has this little plastic thing on it so it doesn't poke their head, scraped it off, and then I put a little bend on it per the instruction in the video. Do you see that tip? Right, it's actually got a little bit of a bend on it. I don't know if you can tell, but it does have a little bit of a bend on it. and I popped that in. So what you're doing with this connector is that tab there is what you're trying to pop down. And it did, I had to fiddle with it for like 10 minutes. And it finally popped out.
One quick note here. If you see in this picture, the tang is pointed up. It's bent up. In other words, it's bent kind of away from the U. That's not right. I didn't realize this, but when I pulled the connector out, I thought I was bending that tab. That's the locking tab. You can see here with the red arrow. I thought I was bending it into the position that it should be, but that is incorrect. It should be down. It should be the other way towards the inside of the U that keeps it locked. I figured this out when I could not get the connector to lock, couldn't get the connector to lock, and I bent it the opposite direction into the U, and then it popped in and locked. But once it was locked, I didn't want to pull it out. So when you're releasing it, and if you are, putting it back in, it should be in this position that you see here in this drawing. So just so that I'm clear, if you're trying to release these pins, what you're going to do is you're going to stick that hair clip in from this point of view beneath the male connector on the inside of the U where this arrow is, and you're going to push up.
So I'm going to put that in, see if I can fill another connector pin with this, and then use this to run the wire to the tachometer signal. One other detail, before you shove the connector in, you have to pop this, it just pries right off. Pop the back off of the connector, off of there, and then you have to pop out this rubber plug out from the back of the connector. So it's in, and this is a weather seal, I believe. Yeah, that's gonna get pushed down in there. So here's where I'm at with the car. The fuel tank is in, the fuel pump is in, the fuel pump is wired. You can see here the fuel pump relay is wired, and I even think it might be wired correctly. I'm trying to go through this. Fuel lines are connected, the fuel filter is in. There is a, what do you call it? The regulator is there, the regulator is connected. The Holley is wired other than the distributor, so you need to put the distributor in. You need to get this number one cylinder to top dead center firing. Get that in. The battery is even charged. The turn signals work. The headlights work. The dashboard lights up when you turn the key on. The stereo even works other than the subwoofers. Don't know why the subwoofers are not working, but that's not critical right now. So I think we're going to get the car started today. All right, the first thing we did, I don't know if you can see there, is we had to measure. We went 2 3/4 inches back, if I can get it to focus, and put a mark on the balancer, so that should be 50 degrees approximately, 50 degrees before top dead center. And that's what the instructions said.
You need to crank it about 1/8 of an inch more.
More into the notch? I thought it's on the
notch.
Oh, is it? Okay, all right, I'll advance
I
it.
think
Or,
you'll.
can you see words on there? No, it's. I think it's. I'm pretty sure it's the tooth. I saw that. Yeah, you see.
Yeah, but there's.
It's the pointer.
Okay.
It's the point, not the recess.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually turned the engine over 180 degrees. Well, 360 on the crank, because the rotor was pointed this way at 18436. It was pointed at cylinder number 6. So now we know that we're on the compression stroke, and as the directions say, 50 degrees before top dead center. All right, distributor's out, and as a bonus, the oil pump drive rod did not fall into the oil pan. That's always a bonus, right? So now,
It would have been better if it just stayed in.
yeah, that would have been better, right? By the way, Ken, you guys have seen in other videos, right? One of my intelligent, smarter friends than me. Always good to have around for this kind of stuff. So now we have to get the new distributor in. But could you explain about where I had spark plug wires wrong? And I probably just copied what was there.
All right. Whoever wired the spark plugs originally put number 1 towards the.
Like if it was here.
If you're looking at the top of the distributor, they put the number 1 spark plug back here.
Wire, yeah. Mm-hmm.
To make it fall in line with what everyone expects with an Olds, number 1 should be pointed about right here.
Okay, yep.
So we're
Which is
going
why
to
we
adjust
took all
it
the.
and just make it correct.
That's why we took all the wires off, because now we got to redo all the wires.
Yep.
Okay, look at that beautiful thing. We've got the cap off at a smaller diameter, right?
There's the crank cam lights.
Oh. Where? Oh, okay. Those two little. Oh, they're down in, where are they? Where are they?
Down
Shoot,
inside
I just
here.
dropped something. I dropped a loom and it went in between the belts. Oh, I see. Like down on that little circuit board thing.
Yep.
There. Okay. You've done this before?
No,
Oh, you sound like you have.
just watched.
Gotcha. And then we just, we probably would want to put this back in, right? This is probably going to be helpful. Okay.
It helps in creating oil pressure.
All right. Let me get this in, then we're going to drop that in, right?
Just look at the orientation and see.
Well, at least it's only at a 350. There's a tiny piece of paper towel. I tried to retrieve it, and it fell down in the oil pan, so it's staying there. But it's just a tiny piece of blue paper towel. That's the oil pump. Drive shaft is in, and then I turned it, and it went down a little further, so it's in. Okay, so we can see if you tilt it a little bit, it's like a, is it a reluctor wheel? Is that the correct thing?
Well,
It's hard to
that's a
see
good
it, but there's
terminology.
windows there, right?
Little teeth,
Uh-huh.
and then there's a sensor right here.
Uh-huh.
I'll be back in about 2 hours.
Okay, love you.
Okay.
There is the sensor right here, and all we're doing once we drop this in, which we drop this in, orienting this at position for spark number 1, then we rotate the base in the block to tell the sensor where that tooth is.
Okay, so the only real important orientation is the rotor to the correct cylinder on the cap.
Correct.
The base can be kind of wherever.
Well, the base can be wherever
long as we
when
can
we
see the
put it
lights.
in, but then we have to adjust
Okay.
it to tell the computer where that is.
Got it.
I can't see the hole, so I don't want to grab grease and take it.
I guess I can get it down in. Hold on. Yeah, it's in, I think. Hold on. Can't quite see down in there. It's a little dark. Hitting something? It almost feels like the gear is too big to go through the daggum hole or something.
That's what it looks like from here.
What the crap? Okay, so it is a week later now. I did get, 6 days later, I guess, I did get a new distributor from Holley. They exchanged it even. Thank you so much, Summit Racing. And we're about to find out if this distributor is going to fit. Remember, the other one, the distributor gear, was larger than the hole in the block. I know it's not a problem with my block because I have several blocks here and I measured 3 of them. So let's turn this thing on. It's zeroed. And let's see what we're getting here. 1.5, okay, it's smaller. 1.50, 1.499, 1.502. I think it's going to work. 1.5 inches is about what I get on. This is definitely about 20 thousandths smaller. What I'm measuring is the diameter of this gear here. So let's see if this thing fits. Oh, we're in good shape now. I'll have to pull it back out to lube it up, and I'll have to go read the instructions on how to set this thing up, but we're in good shape now. I'm happy. Now here's how I'm going to prep the distributor to put in. First thing I'm going to do, this connector here, you just pry this end cap off. What I have to do is add in a lead to this so that I can get a signal from my tachometer, and I talked to Holley is the only reason I figured this out. This is an extra one of these blade connectors. I pulled this out of a spare connector from the EFI. And it goes in the middle on the top row there that has, you know, nothing in it. So you got to pull this little plug out, right? Because there's nothing there. That plug plugs it. And then, see, this wire has a weather seal on it, if you see there, right? So this wire, I think it's going to go, you got to put it in the right way. I think it goes the same way. I think it goes with the connector prong down. There, and it just locks in, right? And snug in this little weather seal. There we go. It's kind of weird the way this works is because what you're doing is you're taking a wire from the ECM that goes into this plug, and then I'm taking this back to the car. It's kind of backwards loop, but whatever, you know, it works. So now that connector is ready to go. Oh, I forgot. then this little cap will pop back on. All right, now the connector is ready to go. Only thing I'm trying to figure out now is what do we use for an O-ring here, because the kit came with one, but it's clearly way too small. I'll show you. Here's the factory Olds distributors. You see there's the oil seal there. It's obviously quite large. It goes in that groove. But this is the O-ring. Only O-ring in the kit, and I already had it in there, and it doesn't come anywhere near to being large enough to touch anything. It won't do anything, so I'm trying to figure that out still. So I just rooted through, I've got two boxes. I've got one up there and one there of old engine gaskets and stuff like that. And I did find this O-ring in there. I can absolutely not tell you where it came from. This is a minimum of 20 years old, but it's still nice and supple. And when I try to measure it without crushing it down, it's about 135 thousandths or so, something like that. Yeah, about 135 thousandths, you know, maybe 135, 140, something like that. And as far as the relaxed size, it's a little under 1.5 inches. It's hard to say. Yeah, it's like 1.3 inch inside diameter. Shaft is like a little over the groove. Yeah, that's fine, because this part, the larger part that fits down into the distributor, is about 1.5 inches. So I tried it once. It does work. And just roll it over. I don't know why the kit doesn't come with it, but there we go. See, now it sits in the groove, and it's just proud just a little bit, so that should seal up nice. FYI, the ID inside diameter of that groove where the O-ring sits, I'm getting around, it's hard to say, I get around 1.29 inches, 1.291, 1.292. So yeah, you want something around an O-ring with ID around 1.25 inches, I guess I'd say 1.25, 1.3 inches to sit in there. Yeah, because it's, yeah, that works good. It almost feels like it's just a hair loose over the shaft, but that's fine because it's going to get compressed. And I noticed there was a fuel pump on the car. I don't need a mechanical fuel pump. So I removed the mechanical fuel pump, some 1/8 inch thick steel bar here, and a gasket to make a pattern. And now we've got a mechanical fuel pump block-off plate. And I think I'll just paint this up. And there it is, all painted up, and I've got some new hardware, 5/16 bolts, and a new gasket ready to go on. It comes with an assembly lube. I believe the instructions said that that's for the distributor gear. I believe it said if you're going to start it immediately or very quickly, you can just use oil, but I think this would be the safer bet. I think we're going to start it here soon, but you never know. I'm just putting a little bit on the shaft as well, just to keep it from sticking, I guess, maybe to the, aluminum, to the galvanic corrosion, to the iron housing. Okay, guys, the radio is out right now. Please ignore that. Anyway, dash is partially apart, but I think I'm ready to start to power up the Holley Terminator for the first time. Set it up for the distributor, then I can set the distributor up. I've got my instructions here, and I believe the first thing it says is to put it in the run position and power it on. Oh, I'm really nervous about this. Tach is out. Should be okay, no bare wires. I'm in the run position. Let me see if dash lights have power. I don't see anything on the Terminator yet. I think it's plugged in. That's not good. I got no power to it. The fuse is in. Alright guys, I'll be back when I figure out why it's not turning on. Okay, when I turn the key on, lights come on. I have to go see what those lights mean. No fuel pump. No fuel pump. And the Holley screen is not coming on. Okay, that was very simple. The plug, can 1, the plug, I'd been messing with that wiring. I mean, I moved that wiring, I should say. Okay, it just wasn't plugged in. So please run the wizard or load a calibration. Okay, perform a TPS auto set before startup. Okay. To begin, choose wizard's icon from the main menu. Well, that's touchy. Okay, choose GCF wizard icon. Choose TBI. Oh, I can, yeah, touch the screen or next, I guess. Okay, choose a proper system type of TBI. Oh, geez. And mine is 4154 injector. I'd like to see the rest of the menu. Okay, number of cylinders, 8. Cubic inches. Ooh. Wow. Not 700. Ah! What in the crap? Three, 5. Wow, this thing is sensitive. Okay, 350 cubic inches for now. What the hell? Engine displacement. Didn't I just do this? Yeah, this is, I don't think I can do this with this drag and drop thing. I can get you in the ballpark. Next. Target idle speed. Let's raise that to 750, I'd say. I'll take 800. What the hell, man? What the hell, man? This thing is obnoxious. This thing is really pissing me off. This screen sucks. Does anybody use this stupid thing? They'll definitely blow 235 degrees duration. It's a stock camshaft. Ignition type. Oh, geez. What do I pick for that? Let me go reference the instructions. This is a little confusing. The directions, this is the Dual Sync distributor directions, and it says from the drop-down menu, enter ignition type of custom, but there is no custom on this. So I'm going to go with Holley Dual Sync. Fuel pressure, it's 58.5, so 60 psi. Power adder type, none. Map sensor, it should be the internal 1 bar, I would assume. Let me check the instructions here. It's got to be internal 1 bar because it is internal to the system. Transmission control, yes, yes, please. Transmission type. Tire diameter, wow. Rear end ratio. Oh my God, I'm about to punch this thing. This thing is horrible. This is worse than the 10-year-old Android screens. What the hell? 3.42. Save. Next. Congratulations, you have completed the setup wizard. It is now time to perform a TPS auto set. Okay, start TPS auto set. Make sure ignition is on and engine is not started. See what I mean? It like, I hit it, it lit up, but it didn't take. Slowly press the pedal to the floor, then slowly release. Do this twice. Okay, that seemed easy. Before starting your vehicle, verify that all sensors are reading properly. Turn the key off, cycle it back on. At this time, you should hear the fuel pump come on for 5 seconds to check for leaks. All right, we're not starting yet, but I think it's safe to do that. You can hear the radio turn off. Oh God, please. No calibration detected, so something's wrong. No calibration loaded. To continue, please run the wizard or load a calibration. Shoot. Didn't hit start, so I never uploaded all the details that I put in, so that was my fault. Please cycle the ignition to complete the operation. Okay. I heard the fuel pump, but I don't smell fuel. I don't smell gas, so that's good. I don't see fuel pressure, which I think you should. But there's no gas in the lines at all, so let me do that again. Let me see if I can have the camera just set up on the fuel pressure gauge. All right, so we've got some fuel pressure. I've never set the regulator, so that's probably what I need to do. Okay, I think I've got it set just right now. Man, that adjustment screw is super sensitive. That's what I figured out. Just under 60 PSI, I think that's perfect. All right, I think I'm gonna actually try to start it and see what happens. I think we should see a RPM signal there. Yep. It started. That shouldn't happen. Okay, I think it's finally running. The timing was way off. Let me give you guys an update about where I'm at. So first of all, this is my MacBook. The software is Windows only, that you use to be able to monitor and make changes to and tune the Holley. But what you can do is, first of all, this is the Holley CAN bus cable, CAN bus on that end, which plugs into the Holley. And then this is on this end is a USB-A. Now we have two problems. Number one, the MacBook doesn't accept USB-A. So that's easily solved just by getting this USB-A adapter to USB-C. So then the next thing you have to do, though, is you have to get Windows to be actually running on your MacBook. I don't know that it's going to work, right? I got Windows running. I got the Terminator software to open up on my MacBook, but it's still not communicating with the ECM. But I'll put a link in the description on how you get Windows on your MacBook. It's not too difficult. The only hookup I ran into was there's this one large file you have to download. When I did that, I had to reboot my MacBook because it just wouldn't wouldn't finish downloading it for some reason. But here, let me turn the camera on. I'm going to show you the big stupid problem that the dumb thing that I did and how we're going to remedy it. So if you go under the dash, do you see that right there? This comes directly from the ECM, the Holley ECM. That is the map sensor input. And I never ran a vacuum hose to it. Duh, my mistake. So thank God the Holley guy was able to diagnose that, because I was reading 98 kilopascals of a map sensor pressure of the key off, key on idling, 98. So he's like, boom, that's it right there. So it's got to hook up the vacuum line. The other end of this goes directly to manifold vacuum, and then we're going to restart it. And now it's plugged in. By the way, this is two pieces. That is a nipple end that plugs into that. And it's a little adapter that's just a few bucks from Summit Racing. I'll put the part number in the description below. So let me tidy up this vacuum line a little bit and see if this runs. So I've got the vacuum line routed through the firewall, one piece, and I'm putting it right down here. You can see there that is I think it's a 1/4-inch fitting. This is on the Performer intake manifold, and then there's a adapter, damping it down to 1/8 inch, and this little brass fitting. And I'm giving it its own. I was almost considering it just teeing into here, which is manifold vacuum as well, but the Holley guy said, give it its own fitting direct to the manifold, so I'm gonna be coachable. $13 to 1 air fuel. So I think this might be a good place to stop the video. I can't tell you guys, man, I'm just grinning from ear to ear with this thing. I haven't moved it yet. It's still up on jack stands. The transmission did get filled. It's got 15 quarts in it. The dipstick is reading full. And I've run it several times. Coolant temperature, caps out around 160, 170. I've got good oil pressure, hot at idle at 1,000 RPM. I've got like 36, 38 PSI, at 1,000 RPM. Of course, remember, this is the stock small block that's in it. Air-fuel ratio is, in that 13.5 range. It's learning. Throttle response is, it's very quick. You know, it is a stock 350 with a performer intake, but I don't even know where the timing is at. The timing chain, I think, is worn on this engine because the timing jumps around all over the place, but it still has crisp throttle response. So I can't wait to drive it. But before I drive it, I need to get a windshield in it. I need to get the rear glass in it. I have a windshield for it here. I've even got the windshield install kit from rustreplace.com. You know, those, but I need to put in those studs for the trim before the window goes in. But anyway, so running, wish I could get a video of it driving, but that will be coming soon. So it's just, oh my gosh, it's so awesome just to get this thing running. It's been a year since this thing has started. And it just, man, you know, it just, I'm just so grateful. Even though there's been a lot of challenges in getting this thing running and it's like way over budget, these are all first world problems. And I really try to remember that and just be really grateful. And I'm gonna give you one tip. You know, I'm 52 years old. I went 19 years without a car because of changing careers and having family and, you know, just got out of the hobby. If you're a young guy, don't be too, I don't know, desperate, rushed. Don't do dumb things to get a decent car. You know, I mean, like I said, I waited quite a while before I did a car the right way, you know, when I was able to financially. So it'll come, focus on it, but put the stuff in place in your life, you know, where this is the fruit, you know, not necessarily the center of your life, you know, where it comes as a result of going after other things, and career and family, you know, need to be there as well. So I got to give a shout out to a couple of people. Ken, that you saw in the video earlier, works at Summit Racing, and Gary Wingfield. Thank you guys so much. Summit Racing in general, you guys have been really great in general with, you know, just the support, the tech, you know, and the service as well, like when I had to exchange that distributor. And then also, I really want to thank the Holley technical line. I must have talked to them 7, 8, 9 different times. They're great. They're friendly. It must be so frustrating to deal with people like me who are like, oh, I didn't hook up a map sensor line. You know, like, and they don't belittle you. They speak American, if you know what I'm saying. Great people at the Holley tech line. I talked to, I don't know how many, but a bunch of different guys, and they were all really good and knew their stuff. So even though sometimes the directions are kind of vague because, you know, the directions say, yo, your system may have this line and may have this color wire, it may not, which is kind of frustrating. The tech line more than made up for it. So I really appreciate you guys. Holley, you guys rock, and I hope to see you guys at the Power Tour next year. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all you guys that watch and comment, especially. If you hit that little like button, that really does make a difference. Subscribe if you'd like to. And, you know, if you liked this video or some of my other ones, maybe you want to send a link to one of your buddies. All right, God bless you guys. Have an amazing day. Thank you.